Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Excel Edge podcast. I'm Lex.
And I'm Vera.
Right. And we are so excited for this deep dive today, especially for our Filipino listeners out there. We've been getting a lot of questions about buying property,
Yeah, especially for first-time homebuyers.
especially for first-time homebuyers
And even investors.
and even investors, those who are maybe thinking about getting married or are already married.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big question, right? Can you buy property in the Philippines without involving your spouse? And, well, today we're going deep on this using this article from Respicio & Co. called Can I Buy a Property Without Involving My Spouse in the Philippines?
Yes, that's a really great article.
It is, and I think it'll be super helpful, especially for our Filipino home buyers and investors out there, to kind of break down the legalities and everything involved.
Yeah, and I think what might surprise people is that the answer isn't really just a yes or no. It all comes down to this thing called your marriage property regime, which a lot of people don't even know about.
Right. Like, I'd never even heard of that before reading this article.
Yeah.
So,
It determines how property is owned between spouses.
yeah, how property is owned within a marriage. And there's actually 3 different regimes in the Philippines.
You got it.
Okay, so marriage property regime, I got to be honest, this is not something they teach you in high school, right?
Right.
So break it down for us. What are these 3 systems all about?
Okay, so let's start with the most common one, which is absolute community of property.
ACP.
ACP, yeah. And it's kind of the default for most marriages in the Philippines. And essentially what it means is what's yours is mine and what's mine is yours when it comes to property.
Oh, okay. So like even if I was to buy a condo with my own savings, my spouse would automatically own half of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Wow.
And same for the opposite. Anything that your spouse brings in, it becomes part of the community property as well.
Okay, that's a big one
Yeah.
for couples to think about.
Yeah, it is.
So what are the other 2 systems then?
Okay. So the second one is called Conjugal Partnership of Gains, or CPG. And this one, it's more common if the marriage happened before August 3rd, 1988, or if there's like a prenuptial agreement that specifies CPG.
Okay.
Yeah. And here, the main difference is that what each spouse brings into the marriage, that stays separate. But anything you earn together during the marriage, that's shared.
Okay. So like if I bought a house before I got married, that would stay mine.
Yeah.
But if we bought like an investment property together after the wedding,
Yes.
using our income, that would be considered like shared communal.
Precisely.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then we have the third one, complete separation of property, or CSP.
ASP.
CSP. This one, everything stays separate no matter when you got it, before the marriage, during the marriage. But to have this system, you definitely need a prenuptial agreement.
You need a prenup.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Gotcha. So under that CSP then, buying property without involving my spouse would be, fairly straightforward.
Right.
But what about ACP and CPG?
Right.
It sounds like things could get kind of complicated quickly.
Yeah. It's where those exceptions come into play.
Those exceptions.
And that's really important, especially with ACP and CPG.
Gotcha.
Even in those systems, like if you get an inheritance or you get a gift, those stay separate, or any kind of personal belongings, So there's still that distinction there.
That makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say I inherited some land from my family. Like,
Yeah.
I could buy a property using that inheritance without involving my spouse.
Exactly. Yeah, generally those types of assets are exempt
Okay.
from the community property rules. But here's the thing.
Oh,
Even with those exceptions, there are still situations where your spouse might need to be involved.
okay. Like what? What's an example?
Like selling the family home. Even if the property is technically only under one spouse's name, both spouses need to consent to the sale.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
I guess that protects both parties.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's not just as simple as like having my name on the title.
Right.
My spouse still has some say,
They do.
even if they're not like technically an owner.
Correct. And another thing to keep in mind, banks often want both spouses to sign loan documents.
Okay. Even if the property is considered separate property,
Yeah, a lot of times.
why would they do that?
Well, for them, it's all about minimizing their risk. They want to make sure that they can collect on that debt,
Yeah.
regardless of what happens within the marriage.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense from their perspective.
Yeah.
But it just adds another layer of stuff to think about,
It does.
to the whole process.
Absolutely. And then, there's also what happens if someone passes away.
Right.
Inheritance laws can get involved, and those can really affect property ownership, even if the property was only bought by one person.
So, for our listeners out there, those first-time home buyers, all excited, ready to take that step, buy a property. Why should they even care about this whole marriage property regime thing?
Well, it's not just about romance and happily ever after.
No.
It's really important to understand this so that you can make informed decisions and avoid any potential headaches down the road.
Mm,
I mean, imagine buying a property, thinking it's yours,
right,
and then finding out later your spouse has a claim to it.
right.
That could lead to a lot of conflict.
Yeah, nobody wants to start off their marriage with a legal battle.
Exactly.
Yay.
Yeah. It's about protecting yourself and your investment and making sure that you're both on the same page.
Yeah. And this is all about you, the Filipino homebuyer investor.
Exactly.
We want to equip you with the knowledge that you need to navigate this market
Yeah.
confidently. So, okay, let's say my spouse does need to be involved, based on my property regime.
Yeah.
Is it as simple as just having them sign a few documents?
Well, we've talked about the banks and how they often require signatures from both spouses.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's also really important to get advice from a legal expert, someone who understands Philippine property law.
Yeah, for sure.
They can guide you and make sure everything is done correctly.
Think of it this way. You're building a house. You wouldn't start laying bricks without a solid foundation, right? Right. Understanding your property regime and getting good legal advice, that's like laying that foundation for a secure and successful property purchase.
That's a great analogy.
Great.
It's about having that peace of mind, knowing that you have all the documents in order.
Yeah.
Everyone understands what they're supposed to do.
Right.
The transaction is legally sound.
Yeah, exactly. So don't rush into buying that dream property. Take a step back, do your homework, make sure you're playing by the rules.
Yeah, it's a big investment.
It's a big investment.
You want to do it right.
You want to do it right.
So if you're looking for that dream property, whether it's that stylish condo or that luxury villa,
You know where to turn.
you know where to turn.
Excel Edge Realty.
Excel Edge Realty.
We are here to help.
We are here to help you navigate the exciting world of Philippine real estate.
Right. We specialize in mid-priced
Mid-price
to high-ticket property.
to high-ticket properties
Our team of experts can guide you every step of the way.
every step of the way.
And don't forget to visit our website, www.exceledge.com.ph, to browse listings, learn more about how we can make your property dreams a reality.
That's right.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah,
There's a lot more to explore
there is.
when it comes to buying property in the Philippines. So before you sign on that dotted line, talk to a legal expert, understand your specific situation, protect yourself and your investment.
And on that note, we're actually going to dive even deeper
Yes.
into this topic in our next segment.
Yes, we'll be back.
We'll be back after a quick break with more insights into buying property in the Philippines.
Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, we were talking about all those marriage property regimes
Right.
and how they can really impact those property buying decisions in the Philippines.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to think about. I mean, ACP, CPG, CSP, it's almost like a whole new language, right? But let's say I've done my research. I know which regime applies to me, and I'm ready to start, seriously looking at properties.
Mm-hmm.
What are some practical steps I can take to make sure everything's, above board and I'm protected legally?
That's a great question. Remember those exceptions we talked about?
Yeah.
Like inheritances, gifts, personal belongings.
Right.
Those are usually considered separate property,
Right.
even if you're under ACP or CPG.
Okay, so if I was planning to buy a property using money that I inherited from my Lola, I should have documentation, ready to prove that those funds came from that inheritance.
Exactly. Clear documentation is really key.
Think bank statements, inheritance documents, anything that can clearly link those funds to something that is, considered separate property.
Yeah.
This will really help solidify your ownership if any questions come up later on.
Makes sense. But what about situations where my spouse does need to be involved, like we're buying a property together, or I need them to co-sign a loan? Are there any, best practices to keep in mind?
Well, communication is key in any relationship, but it's especially important when it comes to big financial decisions, like buying a property, right?
Yeah.
Sit down with your spouse, have that open and honest conversation about your goals, your expectations, and any concerns you might have.
And it sounds like these conversations should be happening pretty early on, like even before you start, browsing real estate listings.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's much easier to get on the same page from the beginning than try to sort things out when you're already in the middle of a purchase.
Right. Hmm.
It can help prevent misunderstandings and those conflicts down the road.
I can imagine those conversations being, a little bit tense, especially when it comes to things like money and property.
Yeah.
Are there any tips for keeping those conversations productive and preventing them from turning into arguments?
I think this is where a third party can be really helpful.
Okay.
Consider bringing in a financial advisor or even a therapist who specializes in couples and finances.
Hmm.
They can really help you navigate those sensitive topics
Yeah,
and come up with a plan that works for both of you.
that's a really good idea, actually.
Yeah.
Having that neutral party there, I think it would take a lot of the pressure off
Right.
and allows you both to focus on, finding solutions together.
Exactly.
And don't forget, a prenuptial agreement can help simplify things a lot,
It really can.
even if it's not the most, romantic topic to talk about,
But it can save a lot of headaches later.
especially if you choose that uh, complete separation of property regime.
Right.
It's basically like having like a clear roadmap for ownership within the marriage.
You got it. And even if you don't go with CSP, a prenup can still outline how you handle property that's acquired during the marriage, so it really gives both partners, peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about documentation, open communication, prenups. Are there any other practical tips or potential pitfalls that our listeners should be aware of when navigating this whole process?
Yeah. A common mistake is assuming that just because your name's on the title, you automatically have full control over
Yeah.
the property.
Yeah, we talked earlier about, even if the property is technically mine, my spouse might still need to consent, like if we want to sell the family home.
Exactly. And it all goes back to, understanding those nuances of your specific property regime.
Right.
And I think it's really crucial to get that legal advice before making any major decisions about the property.
Speaking of legal advice, how can our listeners find a good lawyer who specializes in Philippine property law, and what kind of questions should they be asking during that initial consultation?
Well, word of mouth is always a good place to start.
Yeah.
Ask friends, family, colleagues who have bought property in the Philippines.
Right.
They might have some good recommendations.
Okay. Are there any good online resources too, like websites or directories where you can find, reputable property lawyers?
Yeah, definitely. The Integrated Bar of the Philippines has a directory on their website.
Okay.
You can search by their specialization.
Awesome.
You can also look for law firms that, focus on real estate law.
Perfect. So,
Yeah.
okay, I've got a few names, of some lawyers that seem like they might be a good fit. What kind of questions should I be asking during that first consultation?
It's important to find a lawyer who's had experience with cases similar to your situation. So, ask about their track record with property law cases,
Mm.
specifically those dealing with marriage property regimes
Okay.
and how they impact purchases.
Yeah.
You want someone who really understands this area.
Gotcha. And don't be afraid to ask about fees up front, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Transparency is key.
Right, because legal fees can vary.
They can.
So it's good to be clear from the beginning what those services include and
Exactly.
what you're going to be paying.
Yep. And lastly, remember to just trust your gut feeling.
Yeah.
If you don't feel comfortable with a particular lawyer, just keep looking until you find someone that you feel confident in.
That's great advice.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a big decision.
it is.
And you want to feel good about the legal advice that you're getting.
Absolutely.
All right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the more practical side,
Good.
of buying a property.
Okay.
What are some things our listeners should be considering when they're choosing a property in the Philippines?
Location. Location, location. I know it's a cliche, but it's true.
Right.
Think about your lifestyle, your daily commute, access to amenities, all of that stuff that's going to impact your day-to-day life.
Yeah, make sure the property really aligns with, your needs and what you want.
Exactly. And don't forget about resale value
Right.
if you're thinking long-term.
Yeah. Gotta think long term.
Choose a property that's going to hold its value, maybe even appreciate.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's always a good idea to do your research on the developer,
Oh, yeah, for
the
sure.
property management company,
Yeah.
and just the overall reputation of the building or community that you're considering.
Absolutely.
These are all, really important factors that can affect your experience as a homeowner.
Yeah, they really can.
This is where working with a good real estate agent can be so helpful,
It
right?
really is, yeah.
They can provide those insights into the market and help you find that property that, meets your needs and your budget.
Yeah. A good agent can be your advocate, your guide, your
Right.
trusted advisor throughout the whole process,
Yeah.
from searching to negotiating all the way to closing the deal.
And speaking of reputable real estate agents,
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking for, a mid-priced
Mid-price?
to high-ticket property in the Philippines,
You know where to turn.
Excel Edge Realty.
Excel Edge Realty.
We are here to help you navigate this exciting world of Philippine real estate.
Head over to our website
www.exceledge.com.ph.
to explore our listings and connect with our team.
We are passionate about helping Filipinos find their dream homes and making smart investments
Absolutely.
in this market.
Yeah. On that note, I think let's take a quick pause,
Sure.
gather our thoughts.
Yeah.
And when we come back, we'll be wrapping up our deep dive into buying property in the Philippines
Yeah.
and sharing some final thoughts and resources to help you on that journey to homeownership.
Welcome back to the Excel Edge podcast.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot today, really exploring what it takes to buy property in the Philippines, especially for those of you who are in relationships.
It's definitely a complex topic.
It is.
A lot of legal stuff, but
Yeah.
hopefully we've, made it a little bit easier to understand and most importantly, helpful for you.
Right. As you're making these big decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
Those marriage property regimes, ACP, CPG, CSP, it can be overwhelming, but I think, knowledge is power, right? The more you understand,
Yeah,
the more confident you'll feel
for sure.
going through the process.
Yeah.
So before we wrap things up, let's recap.
Okay.
What are the key takeaways? What are those essential things that our listeners need to remember when, they're thinking about buying property in the Philippines, especially if they're married or thinking about getting married?
Well, I think the first thing is, like we said, understanding that marriage property regime,
Yes.
that's really the foundation for everything.
Yeah.
Figure out which one applies to you and your spouse,
Right.
what it means for ownership.
And don't just assume it's that default one.
Right, the ACP.
The ACP.
If you were married before August 3, 1988, or if you have a prenup, you might be under a different system.
Exactly. Yeah. And once you've got that figured out, it's time to have that really important conversation with your
Yes.
partner. Right.
Yeah.
Talk about goals, expectations, concerns, anything that's important to you.
Yeah, and I think don't wait until you found that perfect property to have those conversations.
Right.
Much easier to be on the same page from the start
Yeah.
than trying to figure things out, last minute.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. We also talked about the importance of documentation,
Yes.
especially if you're using funds from an inheritance
Right.
gift, anything that would be considered, separate property.
Keep those records organized.
Yeah. Have everything ready to go.
It can really help
Yeah.
if questions come up later on.
Those documents can be lifesavers.
Exactly.
And lastly, if you're feeling a little lost or unsure about, any part of this process, don't hesitate to reach out, get some legal advice from a professional
Absolutely.
who specializes in this.
It can make a world of difference.
Yeah. Having that guidance.
They can walk you through it all, protect your interests,
Exactly.
make sure everything's done right.
Yeah. So to sum it all up, know your property regime, communicate with your partner, keep those important documents organized, and get legal advice when you need it.
You got it.
Follow those steps.
And you'll be well on your way.
You'll be on your way to a smooth
A smooth and successful.
purchase.
Yes.
Buying a property, it's more than just a transaction.
It really is.
It's an investment in your future.
Yeah, it's a place to build memories, create a life, feel at home.
Exactly. It's finding that space where you can thrive
Absolutely.
and, create a future
Yeah.
for yourself and your loved ones.
And if you're ready to start that journey, you know where to turn.
Excel Edge Realty.
We're here to help
We are here to help you
navigate the market.
find the perfect property.
Find that property that checks all the boxes.
We specialize in those mid-priced
Mid-priced.
to high-ticket properties.
Yes.
Offering a range of options.
So head over to our website.
www.excel.com.ph.
Explore those listings.
Our team is ready to answer your questions, guide you every step of the way.
We're passionate about helping Filipinos
Yes.
find their dream homes.
Make those smart investments.
Absolutely.
And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive.
We have.
We hope you found this episode helpful, informative, and insightful.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on the Excel Edge podcast.
Don't forget to hit that follow button and share this episode with anyone who might benefit from this knowledge.
We believe that everyone deserves to be empowered when it comes to making these decisions.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Into the world of Philippine real estate.
See you then.